UFC 309 Jones versus Miocic took place last night, and it was a damn good card. Better than the name value would have led you to believe. Pretty much from top to bottom, filled with good fights. There was only one that was a real stinker to me, and that was Bo Nickel and Paul Craig. I saw some people defending it, but I will not. I thought it was trash, especially from a dude that's a minus 1,300 favorite and was saying shit like he'd beat Hamzat. Absolutely ludicrous. But before I did get into the fights, I want to mention one thing. Since I record all these reactions the night before, I didn't mention one thing about the co-main, and that was, holy shit, Michael Chandler was cheating a lot in that fight. Fucking eye pokes, fence grabs, back of the head shots, a lot of back of the head shots, and the referees tonight were just fucking Stevie Wonder out there. There was a bunch of fence grabs that I saw, and no one got called for that shit. And if they did, the referee would just like lightly say, "Hey, stop doing that." They wouldn't, go up and slap their hands or threaten to take a point or anything. They were very soft on the fighters, and it was kind of annoying, to be honest. But let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about the fights. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. I went with John Jones by decision, and he gets it done by late third round, a spinning back kick to the body. Stipe did better and worse than I thought he would do. Throughout most of the fight, I was talking with my buddy saying, like, is Stipe really slow, or is John Jones just on it tonight and fast as shit? But at the end, I came away knowing that Stipe was slow. He looked his age. It was like he was striking in half speed as he used to. And he was still landing on Jones. And that has me more interested in, well, I was already interested in the Aspinall fight, but more interested in the Pereira fight. If Pereira can manage to stay on the feet, which isn't a crazy big ass. John isn't the type of dude that's shooting single legs and double legs often. Like he does this whole look-see-do thing where he'll get a takedown when he sees it. But if Pereira can keep it on the feet, he could potentially hurt Jones. I mean, Stipe was striking in half speed, landing decent shots. And he's a lot more one-dimensional striker than someone like Pereira. But I don't know if Pereira can hurt Jones. I mean, he seemingly can hurt anyone in the sport, but Jones has always had a good chin, and at heavyweight he's got a better one. So it's a big ask of Pereira. In round one, I thought fucking Stipe was done for after he got hit with that Asotogari. I think that's what it's called. And it looked like Stipe weighed 15 pounds when John Jones hit that trip on him. Just flung him around, flipped him over, and just was so heavy on top. There was no way Stipe was getting up, and when he did, I immediately was nervous as shit that Jones was going to go for a guillotine. But Stipe rode the round out on bottom, and he paid for it. He took a lot of damage on bottom. Probably the most he took in the fight outside of the spinning kick, and a straight that landed, I think, in round 3 or late in 2. Jones didn't look the greatest. His ground game looked incredible when he was on top, and the trip was fantastic, and the spinning kick was badass, but his striking didn't look that great, and it has me thinking maybe the Pereira fight can be closer. But if he gets Pereira down, I think he has to do the same thing as Stipe, ride it out, wait till next round, or risk fucking a guillotine. I personally think he should fight Aspinall. Obviously, I mean, he's the interim champion. I know the whole rigmarole of all of it. He doesn't want to fight some dude he doesn't like and whatnot. He doesn't do anything for his legacy, and he wants to be heavily compensated for it. But aside from all that bullshit, I think it's just the most interesting fight. Like, one thing Tom Aspinall has that Stipe doesn't is speed. He is probably fucking 3 times faster than Stipe, at least now. Maybe not when Stipe was in his prime, but Tom does not look that slow in the cage, and I think that would give John trouble. And it makes me just so curious to see, can Jones flip Aspinall around like that? Like he's just a 5-pound bag? I don't see that happening. But he is the GOAT, and he proved he is. And to talk about the finish, the spinning back kick was literal perfection. It was fucking poetry in motion. Gotta give him that. And he was landing a lot of good. He's landing a lot of good body kicks throughout the fight. He landed a teep in the first round in like the first 40 seconds that immediately had me worried. Had Stipe hunch over. He did not react well to the body shots. Something else that Pereira and Aspinall will bring that Stipe doesn't is they actually have some really good calf kicks. And Stipe did land some leg kicks, but they were inside kicks, like shin to shin. And they didn't have a lot of force on them. They're not the outside calf kicks that we've come to know now that are just so fucking devastating. And Pereira has like one of the sneakiest, trickiest ones in the game, and Aspinall's are just blisteringly fast. And I want to see that, man. Regardless of who he fights, he should not retire. He looked good enough to keep going. Like, I know he doesn't want to tarnish his legacy, but still, like, he needs to fight again. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This is a very good fight. A very good one for Charles, too. He looked incredible. I went with Charles by second round KO. I thought it would be very similar to their first fight, and it almost was. The first round wasn't similar at all, but the second round was. In round one, not much happened. They had a few striking exchanges, and then Charles timed a really good takedown and got Chandler down. And they kind of ended up in that weird position that you get into after you fail going for a leg lock, or more so like a knee bar. And they just rode the round out in that position. So not much happened in round one. But round two, Charles cracked Chandler with a hook, and he stumbled up against the cage. I was having deja vu of their first fight. I thought it was going to go that way, but it didn't. Charles just kept on getting like as soon as he got to Chandler, there was like no resistance at all. He just got to the back or pulled Chandler down. It was crazy how good he looked in the grappling. I mean, I know it's Charles Oliveira, but still, Chandler's known to be a great wrestler, and he just could not get Oliveira off of him, or even really stuff the takedowns. I mean, it says Charles shot 12 takedowns and only got 5, but it felt like more than that. And I guess 5 is accurate, because every time he got him down, Chandler just couldn't get back up or separate. For a second, I thought it was that Charles was going to finish Chandler, and I think he potentially could have at any of the 4 rounds, especially in round 2. In round 2 and 3, it really looked like Charles could have finished Chandler on the feet, but I understand his hesitance to do that and trying to rely on going to the ground, because like we saw in round 5, Chandler is incredibly dangerous and can easily KO you. I've said before that if Chandler uses his head and doesn't just swing for the bleachers and go crazy, he can beat anyone because he has crazy fucking KO power. It's not like the craziest ever, but he hits really fucking hard. He's just a ball of muscle. And he nearly finished Oliveira in the 5th round, but he started just swinging wildly and missed quite a few shots, and Charles just got a hold of him and didn't let go. And then at the end, Chandler did at this point, like almost one of his signature moves of slamming Oliveira in the middle of the mat when he had his back. Crazy strength from Chandler to have in round 5 to be able to pick Oliveira up on his back. Wish he could have pulled off some of that stuff a little earlier in the fight, even though I wanted Oliveira to win, obviously. I picked him, wanted him to win. But I enjoy a competitive fight, and it really wasn't that competitive until round 5. Chandler landed good strikes here and there, but he wasn't shining at all until round 5. I definitely do think the 2-year layoff of waiting for the McGregor fight definitely impacted him. He almost looked a little rusty, or maybe it was just Charles looking really good. I don't know. But a really good fight. Enjoyed it thoroughly from round 1 to round 5. I know some people will say it was fucking boring grappling, but Chandler is notorious for being extremely hard to submit. And so I can respect Charles for trying to go to the submissions. Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. I went with Bo Nickel by a round 1 KO, and boy was I fucking wrong. It was a unanimous decision, and it was an absolute boring shit show. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, man. These guys were terrified of one another, and Bo Nickel striking might be some of the most one-dimensional shit I've ever seen. He pretty much only has a left overhand where he dips to the right and kind of fakes a takedown, and that's all he's got. It's extremely predictable, and he probably threw 28 of them throughout the whole fight. And mind you, he only landed 54 strikes throughout the fight, through 85. Absolutely ridiculous, embarrassing fucking performance. Lost stock for this, undoubtedly. And Paul Craig wasn't much better. Apparently, like, it says that he threw 130 strikes. I don't fucking believe that. And if he did, I guess I just didn't see it. And he only landed 48. Terrible. Holy shit, embarrassing. Neither guy ever shot a takedown. Don't know why. I mean, we've seen that type of shit happen before in MMA where great grapplers will just, cancel each other out or just, like, avoid the strengths of the other guy. But still, I really wanted to see them grapple. But, like I said, they were terrified of one another. Hardly even threw strikes. At least they both mixed it up in the few strikes they did throw. Like, both guys landed 20 strikes to the head, 13 and 14 to the body, and 17 and 12 to the leg. But it's like they had no damage on any of their strikes. They seemingly couldn't hurt a fucking fly. And at times, Bo was fucking throwing for the bleachers, but still couldn't hurt a chinny Paul Craig. Man, I could rant and bitch about this fight forever, but I guess to give them their credit, Paul Craig is a bad matchup stylistically for Bo Nickel, although, like, not even really. Paul has some of the worst stand-up in the UFC, and I guess now we also know Bo Nickel has some of the worst stand-up in the UFC. To think that Bo Nickel thinks that he can beat Hamzat or people like Izzy, Kaio, dude, he's going to get fucking starched. There's no way in hell he's beating them. Dricus destroys him. Hell, Cannonier and Vittori probably destroy him. I've never had my hype in a fighter be just doused and extinguished quicker than this one. Absolutely terrible performance. I need Bo to get back in there soon so I can see him fucking get starched. And that's another terrible fucking thing about Bo Nickel, is that he barely ever fights. He's so inactive. And so we have to see a performance like this after waiting around to see him fight against an opponent people thought he would destroy. So disappointed. Viviane Araújo versus Karine Silva. I went with Karine Silva by submission or decision, and she lost by unanimous decision. This was such a confusing and frustrating fight to watch. In the first round, Viviane was winning just on volume and kind of skirting away from Karina's damaging strikes. And eventually, Karina landed a good shot that busted up Viviane's nose and then landed a few more shots that, in my opinion, stole her round one. And then in round two, kind of the same thing until they went to the ground. And for whatever reason, Karina Silva kept trying to get it to the ground. Once they got there, Viviane nearly got an armbar. It seemed like she was a step ahead in the grappling. And that's the confusing part, is that Karina Silva obviously had the more damaging shots on the feet and was at risk of being subbed on the ground, but she kept trying to bring it to the ground. I don't understand. She did come close to a Darce at the end of round two, but I don't think her Darce was as close as Viviane's armbar. And seeing as how the striking on the feet was pretty close, there wasn't as much of a damaging shot as there was in round one, and so I can see that round going to Viviane. And then round three, Karina Silva is just fucking gassed, has nothing left, shooting really, really bad takedowns and failing them. And just anytime her leg would get picked up when she'd throw a kick and it'd get caught, she'd just flop on her back and just have the worst body language possible, absolutely losing the optics of the fight. If I was her coach, I would have been losing my mind in that corner, seeing her do that shit. It was infuriating. Not even because I got my pick wrong, just because I can't stand seeing fighters do that. When she got up, she managed to press forward and throw strikes, so I don't understand why she kept just flopping to the ground and just having this very defeated posture. Nonetheless, a good win from Viviane. A close win, but a good win. Mauricio Huffy versus James Yontop. I went with Mauricio Huffy by, I think, third round KO, or second. And he got it done by decision. He almost didn't, though. It was a lot closer of a fight than most people gave it credit for, and I could see it going to James. He landed more strikes and had 1 minute and 20 seconds of control time. Huffy definitely landed the more significant strikes, but not by a great margin. He really needs to work on his gas tank. Kind of has me worried for his career moving forward, because he just did not look great in the third round. He was hardly ever the aggressor in this fight. He was counter-striking a lot more than he was going forward. He looked good while counter-striking, but still, like, he barely was going first. And I honestly, like, I know his style is like the crazy karate style, but he needs to kind of fucking dial in a little more and potentially even abandon some of these goofy ass strikes. Like that spinning low kick that he threw, I felt like that used up more cardio than it warranted. Like it wasn't that efficient. He had to do a big giant ass spinning fucking kick to the legs. I don't like it. He often throws a lot of spinning shit. And I felt like that was just gassing him more and more. Like he threw like a fucking tornado kick or almost like a rolling thunder after he had rocked Lon Top. And he just should have went for more conventional boxing. Like his straights are so damaging, and his hooks. And just seeing him rock James and then just go for ridiculous shit, it was quite disappointing. Overall, it was a decent performance. And like I said, James performed a lot better than people expected. Most people thought he would be put out in round one, but he's got a granite chin. And if there were more rounds in the fight, I would be leaning towards James winning it, because he was really pressuring Mauricio in the third round. And it kind of looked like Hoofy was wilting. Good fight overall. I enjoyed it. When you're dealing with a striker that's that explosive, even if it's not the most, even if there isn't a lot of volume in the fight, the danger that is there keeps the hype up. So I enjoyed the fight. Looking forward to honestly both of them fighting whenever they come back next. And they really didn't. I mean, James took a good bit of damage to the head and got rocked quite a few times and had a mouse under his eye, but I don't imagine Hoofy will take off too long unless people don't want to fight him. But even if that narrative was true, I don't see why people would necessarily avoid him now. You can, like, guys who have incredible gas tanks could easily beat him, honestly, if they just really pressure the fuck out of him. You know, Lon Top's not the greatest wrestler, but I know he shot 6 takedowns and didn't get any, but he's not a good wrestler. If a good wrestler, a high-pressure wrestler fights Mauricio Hoofy, I think he'll be in trouble. Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGee. I went with Marcus McGee by late TKO or decision, and he got it done by unanimous decision. Great performance from Marcus, but incredibly frustrating from Jonathan Martinez. My God, he only threw 96 strikes the entire fight. He was insanely tepid and just hesitant. He barely even threw the fucking leg kicks until the third round. That's like his only thing he's good at. Marcus, for the most part, for round 1 and 2, was just styling on him, beating him to the punch with extended combos, just piecing him up. And then for whatever reason, in the third round, Martinez finally starts landing good leg kicks. And he's still just standing at range, feigning, wasting time in a clinch instead of going for the finish. Like I said a second ago, it was incredibly frustrating. Martinez has some of the worst IQ. Depending on how Chandler does later on, this might be the fucking lowest IQ fight of the card. But yeah, great performance from Marcus McGee. He did what he was supposed to. He probably couldn't have actually found a finish because Martinez does have a really good chin, and Marcus was lighting him up. He didn't really ever seem to fully sit down on a punch, which I can understand. Like, the longer you stay in the pocket, the more chance you got getting knocked out. And Martinez does have some of the best leg kicks. As we saw in the third round, they were really having an effect on Marcus. He was hopping around at points, almost got dropped by one. And I think Martinez should have just fucking spammed leg kicks in that third round, or just swung for the fences. He should have known. His coaches should have told him, you're down fucking 2 rounds, you're losing. Go for broke. But he just remained hesitant. Terrible performance from Jonathan Martinez, but a great one from Marcus McGee. Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. I went with Damon Jackson by decision, and Jim Miller got it done by sub in the first round. Both guys were swinging early, landing good shots. I thought Damon was a step ahead in the striking. Jim Miller definitely had more pop in his shots, but eventually Damon shot I don't want to say necessarily a bad takedown. It was just a little slow. He didn't have the speed on it. He had nice positioning, but he was too slow, and Jim latched up a perfect guillotine, just picture perfect. And Damon had to tap quick. I mean, it was as tight as a guillotine can be. Just absolutely perfect. Great to see a legend like Jim Miller, a crafty vet, getting a good win. And he practically took no damage, so I'd like to see him back in there soon. Keep getting some wins before he's got to retire. I mean, he has 41 or something like that? Still racking up wins in an easy dub like this. Just fucking crazy. Great win for Jim Miller. David Onama versus Roberto Romero. This is a fucking amazing fight. Up until this point, it's definitely fight of the night so far. Roberto came into this fight like a plus 800 or some shit, and he fought like he was trying to prove that he wasn't. And he did. In the first round, he looked incredible. He was extremely fast, had pretty long combinations, and was mixing it up really well, landing great leg kicks and body kicks. He even nearly finished Onama early on, and fucked it up by going for a rear naked. I think if he would have just postured and rained down ground and pound on Onama or let him up, he could have potentially got Onama out of there. But it's not what happened. He went for a rear naked, didn't get it, and they separated and got back to the feet and started striking again. And late in the first round, Onama landed I think it was a hook or a straight, can't remember, but he rocked him, continued, rocked him again and dropped him, and landed some decent ground and pound at the end of round one. All the judges gave Onama that round. I think it could have went either way. It was really close. Onama dropped him and got dropped himself, but Roberto landed more strikes in round one. So I understand them giving it to David Onama. And then the second round, Roberto slows down, Onama picks up, and you could just tell, as the fight went on, the tide was slowly shifting to where Roberto's gas tank was kind of diminishing, and Onama seemingly didn't get, really any more tired as the fight went on. He just increased in volume as the fight went on. And as the scorecards, all of them unanimous 30-27, I gave Onama the second and third round. I'm trying to really think of any, significant parts from round 2 and 3. It was just, for the most part, Onama a step ahead. He looked great. I will say, he's always, from my memory, kind of been a slow starter. Normally doesn't look the greatest in round 1 and looks much better in 2 and 3. And that was true for this fight. Roberto Romero, though, he definitely gained a fan out of me. I'm very impressed with his performance on short notice here. They fought at lightweight, and for the first half of the fight, I was just, for whatever reason, I kind of forgot that this was a short notice thing that got moved up to lightweight. And initially I was thinking, man, Roberto is kind of small for lightweight. But I think he'll look a lot better when he's actually, acclimated in featherweight. He looked great for a short notice guy fighting a dangerous dude who, a lot of people are high on David Onama. I don't know why so many people were overlooking Roberto. I guess, a lot of people didn't know who the fuck he is. I didn't either. Was not familiar with his game. A great addition to the UFC, and he's gained a fan in me. So, yeah. Looking forward to both of these guys fighting whenever they fight next. I imagine probably both of them are going to take a couple of months off, especially Roberto. He took more damage than Onama. Yeah, something like a March or May return for Onama. This is what I'd have in mind for him. Marcin Tybura versus Gennaro Diniz. I'd went with Gennaro Diniz by second round KO, and Marcin Tybura got it done by doctor stoppage before the third round. Damn, this was disappointing. I understand the stoppage, though. He was cut up pretty badly, and obviously was concussed before the doctor got in there. He hardly could get up off the ground. His coaches pulled him to his feet. And he had cuts on both of his eyelids and the bridge of his nose. But in round 1, he hurt Marcin early in one of their exchanges, and Marcin kind of fell down and went into a takedown at the same time. Gennaro tried to go for the ground and pound finish. They got tangled up. Both guys went for a leg at one point, were throwing hammer fists at each other, and eventually Marcin got top position, stayed heavy, rode out the round, didn't really do much with it, but probably was enough to win him the round. And then in the second round, Marcin wasn't landing the heavier shots on the feet, but he was beating Gennaro to the strikes and landing more. Eventually got an early takedown, I think 2 minutes in, something like that. Once again, he held half guard until he could get to mount. And then when the final 10 seconds came, he just started raining down elbows. Absolutely brutal, bouncing Gennaro's head off the canvas. Cut him up. He could barely stand. Easily, probably a 10-8 for Marcin. Herb could have stopped the fight there, and honestly, it probably would have been a better ending. But yeah, Doctor called it off after that. Gennaro was not very happy with it. He was protesting the stoppage, which I can understand from both points. I mean, he was cut the fuck up. It probably would have gotten worse. But Marcin, he looked gassed after he stood back up from raining those elbows down. And so, potentially, Gennaro could have went out there and KO'd him. Marcin could have looked really bad in the third round. We never know. That's why I don't like stoppages like this. You'd never see doctors like this in the fucking Middle East. But yeah, it was a good finish. Or it would have been a good finish had Herb stopped it at the end of the second round. But I guess I can't complain too much. More so just salty about getting my pick wrong. Mickey Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. I went with Ramiz by submission in the third round, and he got it done by KO in the first. He looked good, took barely any damage, and came out swinging absolute heat from the start of the fight. Just complete disregard for Gall striking, as you should have. I don't think there's any welterweight that should be afraid of Mickey Gall striking. He is now 7-7 in MMA and should be cut from the sport, or not cut from the UFC. I mean, he probably should quit the sport. He's not good. I don't know why he is even still around. Brahimaj starched him. Easy win. Barely took any damage. Like Oban Elliott, he should get back in here soon. And yeah, good performance from him. Not much else to say. It wasn't a long fight, and I guess he mixed it up well, throwing to the body and the legs. Threw a couple of head kicks too that landed. He was pummeling him in the clinch using some really good dirty boxing, having the full tie clinch and kneeing him. Yeah, standout performance for Ramiz in his career. I don't remember him ever looking this good, and I guess this is one of his worst opponents he's ever faced, so he should look that good. He should get back in there soon. Good win from Ramiz. Basil Hafez versus Oban Elliott. I had went with Oban by decision, and he got it done by KO in the third round. He looked pretty good throughout the whole fight. He could have been a little more aggressive, but I guess he was kind of figuring out how he wanted to finish it in the third. They were both missing on most of the shots they were really sitting down on throughout the fight until Oban landed the one he really sat down on in the third. And Basil looked kind of timid throughout the fight. I figured he would be more aggressive. Seeing how he gassed out in one of his recent fights, I guess he was trying to reserve himself a little more. Oban also looked pretty good at mixing it up. He was landing a lot of good leg kicks and body kicks. Diversity was definitely his friend tonight in the striking. He also didn't shoot any takedowns. I figured he would. I thought either guy would shoot takedowns, but neither did. I saw someone in a live chat saying Oban shot a takedown, but I think they were fucking tripping because I didn't see it. But yeah, good performance by Oban. Didn't take much damage. I mean, he ate a few punches and they didn't really leave any marks on him, so he could get back in there pretty soon. An early next year return would be nice to see. I think he's only 28 years old? 26? Yeah, he looked good. He's on a sizable win streak too, 6-fight win streak or some shit. So yeah, would like to see Oban Elliott in there sometime soon. Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Moura. I'd went with Eduarda Moura by third round TKO, but she got it done by decision. I thought she had a pretty clear strength advantage in the grappling and had more pop in her punches. Round one, Hardy landed more shots, but Eduarda's were causing more damage and pretty obviously were landing with more impact. And then I think around 10 or 30 seconds left in the round, she got a takedown and held her there till the round ended. Round two, she got an early takedown, I think a minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes in, and just stayed heavy on top for the rest of the round. Veronica was somewhat active, but she wasn't looking for submissions or trying to get up, so it didn't win her that round. And the third round was very tit for tat, back and forth. It could have went either way, but regardless, Eduarda had already won the first two, so Hardy needed to finish in the third and didn't go for it. And she looked all right when she was actually landing shots against Moura, but she'd get stung herself and kind of just back off and not keep going. And that's pretty much all there is to say about that fight. It was decent. Second round was pretty boring. I think Eduarda should have went for more ground and pound on top, or looked to transition from position. She just kind of stayed in full guard and just really just stayed there on top, landed enough ground and pound to not be stood up, and that was kind of it.